Chosen ones, never reveal your hand until the last card breaks the table. That's the unspoken law of mastery. Your enemies smirked, believing they had cracked your code, confident they had you cornered like a pawn in their cheap little game. But they forgot something. True power doesn't announce itself. True power waits. Elon Musk, a man who built rockets while the world mocked him, understands this law. He knows that silence is strategy, that patience is leverage, and that timing is the most valuable currency of all. And that's why the message tied to you is shaking them to the core. Because just like Musk, you are the unpredictable variable, the one they cannot calculate, the one whose next move they'll never see until it's too late. They thought your stillness meant weakness. They mistook your observation for passivity. But you knew what they didn't. Observation is sharper than any blade. Silence is stronger than any fortress. And patience is the sniper's unmissable shot. By the time they realized they weren't leading the dance, they were already trapped in the rhythm you had set. And now, their overconfidence has become their noose. They're pacing in their own minds, reliving every fake smile, every whispered plan, wondering at which moment they lost control. That torment is their true prison. Chosen one, the billion-dollar message is not just about wealth. It's about worth. Elon Musk may represent innovation and disruption in this world, but your life represents divine disruption in the spirit. They cannot stop what's coming, because the game was yours before they even knew it had begun. If you feel this word is for you, type below, "My silence is my victory." What do the chosen ones see? When did they notice? How much do they know? They ask themselves. Are you curious as to why stillness is so frightful? Because they are forced to listen to their own falsehoods reverberating back to them while they are silent. Silence causes them to question every action, every statement, and every strategic partnership they believe to be wise. They believe they were researching you, selected one. However, this is the harsh reality. They were the subjects of the study. Each of their actions was just another entry in your mental script. The mask they believed to be indestructible cracked again. Imagine them today, smiling on the surface but rotting with paranoia on the inside, cocky 1 minute and shaken the next. That is what happens when you underestimate someone who understands the true value of strategic patience. They believed the game was about making noise, asserting control, and drawing attention. But without a word, you changed the rules. You framed it as a contest between who could look further, wait longer, and hit precisely and only once. And they had no chance in the game. And before we go any farther, selected ones, allow me to make a simple but impactful request. Please support our effort by clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel if this message is already touching a chord with you and igniting that inner fire. Every click, share, and remark enables us to continue investing our efforts into producing material that uplifts you, sharpens your intellect, and serves as a reminder of your true self. It's not simply us you're supporting. It serves as fuel for the movement that we are constructing together. The world needs more voices like yours to take this message forward. Therefore, let's continue to share this power. You're not reacting, my selected ones. You're not weak. You don't play a supporting role in anyone's narrative. You are the silent creators of results. You are the ones who realize that the calm look dominates the whole room, while the loudest boom often fades first. You serve as evidence that the person who watches, waits, and doesn't allow themselves to be seduced into risky actions is ultimately in control of the result. And I'm aware of your current thoughts. You argue, but why not call them out? Why not crush them openly and be done with it? The explanation is straightforward, yet the conceited will never get it since self-destruction is forever, whereas exposing is simple. When their own ego is already making holes in their armor, why brandish a blade? Write amen for angelic protection and contribute with a super thank you up to $20. In their view, your quiet is more powerful than thunder. So why spend energy shouting? Allow them to perspire. Allow them to spiral. Allow the weight of not knowing precisely what you've seen to strangle them. The selected one is the true winner. Their goal was to dictate the tale, but your silence changed it. You let them to become caught up in their own web, even if they wanted to tug the threads. They attempted to demonstrate their invulnerability, but your gaze destroyed all of their deception. They are no longer able to avoid the reality. You were occupied with learning the whole board while others were playing games. They're not planning to harm you right now. They're battling with themselves. They are ensnared in their own paranoia, plagued by the thought that you were 10 steps ahead from the start, that you saw everything, and that you saved every detail. This is the most severe hit of all. The extent of your knowledge will remain unknown to them. More than any encounter, that mystery will haunt them. This is the power that you possess, my darling chosen ones. The power of patience, the power of being silent, the power of not revealing your hand until you have the complete game. You redefine their games rather than just surviving them. Instead of sitting quietly, you allowed your silence to turn into the storm that rocked their world. You didn't just watch. You turned observing into controlling. So take a proud stance. Allow them to wriggle. Allow them to have doubts. Allow them to be afraid of the unknown. Because being the lion doesn't need you to roar. To hold the winning cards, you do not have to reveal your hand. Furthermore, you may demonstrate your might without their acknowledgement. You already have the table. You already have control of the board. And now they know whether they choose to accept it or not. The players were never them. The pawns were them. And I'm grateful. Yes, my selected won you. Your existence here demonstrates why your best tools are observation, patience, and quiet. Do your part if this message is already striking you like the truth you've been waiting for. To let us know you're on this journey with us, press the like button, click subscribe, and leave the number 77 in the comments. Every bit of assistance keeps our goal going and motivates us to provide you with stuff that improves your cognitive abilities and fortifies your advantage. You must understand that what you're going to hear is not typical. Write Amen for angelic protection and contribute with a super thank you up to $20. This ability is reserved for the selected. Now, let's dissect it in more detail. Every word you say from now on will seem like your own mirror looking back at you. I promise. Let's begin. First, when their self-confidence collapses. The performance ends when the mask comes off. A mask may conceal the face, but when the truth approaches too closely, it cannot stop the trembling of terror. This is where things change, my lovely chosen ones. Every sneer, phony grin, and cheesy act starts to fall apart at this point. They believed that wearing the mask made them untouchable and that their practice performance would show you and the rest of the world that they were in charge. However, you have been observing, haven't you? Every break in that mask, every twitch in their eyes, every fake chuckle that doesn't sound real. You've been reading it all. And you know the stage is yours the instant it slips, even for a single heartbeat. They wanted you to think they were really confident. As if they owned the space, they walked confidently about it, defying anybody who dared to question their delusion. However, masks cannot withstand pressure indefinitely. It becomes heavier the longer they wear it, and their body betrays them as soon as you enter, chosen one. They tense their shoulders. Their speech falters. Their gaze flickers away for an excessive amount of time. You can hear the hollowness in their attempt to laugh it off. You can see the hesitancy, and you are aware that this marks the start of their demise. You may be thinking, why don't you just rip the mask off now? The room will ignite if you call them out. True power doesn't need an audience. Thus, the solution is straightforward. Real power doesn't spend time demonstrating things that time will eventually uncover. Since their chosen disguise is already falling apart in their own hands, you don't need to tear it off. Now all of their lies are working against them. Write men for angelic protection and contribute with a super thank you up to $20. Like evidence at a murder scene, every arrogant look is replayed in their own head. They don't need to be destroyed. All you can do is let them ruin themselves. Consider it analogous to a chessboard. They have been behaving rashly, believing they are putting you in a bad situation and that you are the idiot responding to their cunning maneuvers. However, you're not responding. You are calculating. You recorded, categorized, and created a map of their flaws from every sneer, side remark, and whisper behind your back. Then you make that one slip up, that one error, and all of a sudden the board tilts in your favor. They were really playing themselves into checkmate, even if they believe they were playing you. They are devoured by this section. They are unable to mimic instinct, but they may seem to be confident for the sake of the world. Furthermore, instinct is truthful. It occurs during the silence that precedes their response to your query. When they feel you've spotted something, their voice becomes tighter. Even if their tongue is constantly screaming falsehoods, it's evident in the way they move in their seats, as though their bodies know the truth. You capture it all, too. You've taught your mind to interpret energy like it's written in bold, not because you're paranoid. Now comprehend this, selected one. Being silent does not imply weakness. A weapon is silence. Precision is silence. You put them in a mental prison by being silent and allowing them to speculate about what you know. How much did the chosen one see? When did they notice? What do they know? Is the question that sends them into a downward spiral that wrecks them more quickly than any encounter ever could. They always wonder whether your grin is real or if it's a covert indicator that their performance is failing. To them, everything you say seems heavy. It scares them that they can no longer read you. This is where its beauty lies. You never needed to speak louder. You didn't need to hit anybody. You didn't have to reveal them. You just remained still, unwavering, and untouchable while allowing your scrutiny to destroy their own performance. That's the chosen long game. The art of patience is that. You win the fight, but those who hurry to expose their adversaries could gain a moment. Since you are aware that hubris always leads to carelessness, which in turn causes collapse, they are now left trembling, questioning, and looking for unanswerable questions. They stutter while speaking, sidestep your gaze, and even steer clear of you completely. They can't avoid the spotlight when they're close to you because they know deep down that you've seen right through them. And nothing frightens a person more than being really seen. Poetic justice is what this is. They were writing their own demise all along, even if they believe they were writing yours. In reality, they were exposing themselves move after move as you coolly recorded it all, even though they believed you were the one on defense. Furthermore, their face is not simply exposed when the mask eventually comes off. It exposes the frailty, instability, and desperation they have been concealing from both the outside world and themselves. And that is the reason this win stings more than anything else, my chosen one. Because you did more than just win. They weren't just outplayed by you. They had to see themselves lose because of you. Second, the quest was silently victorious. Those who believe no one is watching make the loudest footsteps when the predator releases the victim. Let's dissect the selected ones. The true hunter doesn't run, growl, or expend energy pursuing something that is certain to come into their possession. The true predator is patient, quiet, and motionless. They allow the prey to roam about, think it's safe, and become reckless. And the victim creates its own destiny in that false feeling of freedom. You were the chosen one. You never made a lunge. You didn't flinch. Your patience became the sharpest weapon in the room as you honed it. Imagine this. You're in the middle of a forest. The victim roams about, smelling here, nibbling there, certain that the world is its. You are invisible to it. It's not even suspicious of you. Your eyes were riveted, your breathing steady and quiet, and you didn't squander any movement. It's not a sign of weakness. It's command. Because it believes there is no threat, the prey calms down. Comfort, however, breeds negligence. And the target is constantly exposed by negligence. That's precisely how you've been going, my darling chosen ones. They have nothing to hide from, no indication that you were observing, and no breach in your composure. They showed you everything as a result. They let slip every whisper. You got it. You took notice of every phony grin and every little insult masquerading as comedy. You give them the impression that their attempts to discredit you were successful each time. Why? Because they became braver the more they believed you to be blind. And as they became more daring, they strayed more into the trap they were creating for themselves. The irony is in that. They were only tightening the rope around their own neck, even if they believed they were pursuing you. I am aware of the question that may be on your thoughts right now. Why allow them to escape punishment? Why not cut them off as soon as they go too far? Here's the solution. Selected one. For to be silent is not to give up. Being silent is a tactic. Even the most formidable predator does not roar before striking. They observe. They take measurements. They wait until there is no way out for the prey. You work like that. What fury could not accomplish, you allowed time to do. You allowed them to use their own behavior to demonstrate their own guilt. Imagine that you are seated at a poker table opposite them. They're inflating their chest and grinning because they think you're bluffing. They giggle beneath their breath as they push more chips forward and take risk after risk. You give a nod to give them the impression that you're anxious. You may even fumble a chip. You're holding the winning hand, however, so you're calm on the inside. What scares them the most is that you were the game's dealer, yet they believed you to be the idiot. Or imagine a spider in a dimly lit room's corner. The fly, believing it owns the area, buzzes about and lands here and there. There is no chasing by the spider. It waits, being patient, knowing that the fly would eventually land just where it shouldn't. That's the chosen skill of patience. You win without moving because of this. The reality is straightforward. People who believe they are untouchable are always exposed. Always. They saw your silence as approval. They thought you were agreeing when they saw your nod. When they saw your composure, they assumed it was ignorance. However, each and every one of your movements was intentional. You created the delusion they needed to become reckless. And you saw everything when their guard was down. They're the ones second-guessing now. They mentally reenact discussions. They want to know whether you saw that one slip, that one action, that one whisper. The checkmate is shown here. They are not destroyed when you tell them the truth. It's when people acknowledge that you've had it all along. Remember this, chosen ones. The hunter loses the kill if he attacks too quickly. However, the hunter who waits, releases the prey, and understands when to move is the one who takes home the prize. And you are that. You've already triumphed. They just aren't yet aware of the reality. The third fight was the one they were unaware they were losing. They didn't realize they were losing the game. Being defeated on the battlefield is not the most severe setback. That's when you find out you weren't even considered. Selected one. Reality hits them the hardest at this point. They pretended to be competitors as they strutted with false confidence, thinking they were getting closer to passing you. In actuality, however, they never participated in the race. They were spectators posing as athletes because they believed that by imitating your actions, they might catch up to you. And you were creating a universe that they couldn't even enter in silence. Consider it this way. When they saw your self-assurance, they thought it was a costume they could don. As if authority were an outfit they could borrow, they imitated your words, your body language, and your cadence. However, they failed to realize that style isn't what you carry. Its selected material and substance are impenetrable. You've turned your scars into armor. Your conflicts have etched forth knowledge. The fortitude you've developed in quiet. They cannot purchase, counterfeit, or copy it. Imagine them struggling to keep up with you at every turn, like a frantic runner, reaching for a finish line that doesn't exist for them, panting and perspiring. Even if you're not on the same path, they think they're chasing you. You're not escaping them. They're not being pursued by you. Not that you're racing with them. They cannot even see the vistas you are pursuing on your own. This is where the irony lies. They were only following your shadow, even if they believed they were pursuing success. And there's that slip, that moment when they realize you knew all along, and the spark in their eyes. It wasn't a guess. It wasn't a gut feeling. Every move they made, every effort to outmaneuver you, you had known. And because you were aware of how this tale would conclude, you let them to continue playing. Their breath catches at that point. Their voice shifts at that point. At that point, the phony assurance turns into anxious caution. These days, the questions follow them around like unavoidable ghosts. How long has the selected individual been aware? What did they see? What else are they aware of? In your chosen quiet ways, more than any response you could possibly provide. It presses heavier each time you don't respond, resting on their chest like an unliftable weight. They become aware that they have been running at full speed in a race that is just in their minds. You weren't even recognizing their competition. Since you were never in competition, you didn't have to. For them, it is the tragedy. As soon as you stepped in, they judged themselves against you. They attempted to edit themselves to keep up with you, changing their tone when you talked and calculating their grins when you glanced in their direction. But before what? They won't ever respond to that question since you weren't observing them. They weren't being pursued by you. You were only advancing for your own sake. And they are more hurt by it than by losing, because they didn't merely fail to defeat you. The problem is that they were never really involved in the game. They now live with that understanding. Each move they make during a competition is a step closer to your shadow. You never even had to lengthen that shadow. It just exists due of your existence alone. What scares them the most is that they now understand that they are really playing catch-up in a game you have already outgrown, regardless of how loud they are or how hard they try to show themselves. This is the most destructive checkmate ever chosen, the one they don't anticipate. Swords were not used to defeat them. A conflict did not crush them. They lost because they were waging pointless wars, racing in circles and swinging at shadows. Untouchable and indomitable, you continue to go ahead without once raising your hand. They will thus always be in your orbit, because you were busy creating and they were busy competing. You were forging a route they would never walk on as they fought for a spot next to you. They are not the only ones who have lost. It's a harsh reality that pierces deeper than any overt loss. You were never on an equal footing with them. They were never in charge and were never your competitor. They will always be under the shadow of a game they have never even comprehended, chosen one. The fourth is the conflict. A shadow struggled against them, battling shadows in an unwinnable fight. The intellect that made the motions is not yours, but you may imitate them. Let's be frank, my beloved chosen ones. The fact that your adversaries attempted to harm you is not their biggest sorrow. They squandered all of their energy battling a ghost. They weren't fighting against you. They were fighting against the mental picture of you that they had created. No matter how hard they tried, they could never touch, control, or duplicate that vision. They studied you like a frantic learner who believes that mastery may be attained by memorization of answers. They attempted to bottle up every word you spoke, every pause you made, every look you made, and every quiet you made, believing they could spray it on themselves and instantly embody your soul. However, essence is not a costume. It is a choice. In other words, it cannot be taken. Essence is sculpted by the storms you walk through while no one was looking, etched in scars that only you bear, and forged in the fire of your fights. They preferred the light to the heat. They did not want the weight, but they did want the crown. They lost before the conflict even began because of this. Consider this. They traced the shadow of the sun in an attempt to catch it. They were never able to retain the light or feel the burn, no matter how precisely they sketched or how meticulously they delineated. And that's precisely what took place here. Imitation, in their opinion, was a quick route to power. They believed that the world would mistake them for the genuine thing if they talked like you, moved like you, and even dressed like you. However, there is a gravity-selected one for authenticity. You can't fake it. It is not replicable. Furthermore, it is absolutely impossible to counterfeit. That weight speaks for itself as soon as you enter a room. They are unable to replicate the stillness that follows you, but they can imitate the movements. They can copy what you say, but they can't replicate the impact of your delivery. This is where the irony lies. While you weren't even listening, they were absorbed with you for all this time. You weren't there when they made their selection. You weren't in a competition. You weren't anticipating every move they made. You were too preoccupied with creating, developing, changing, and pursuing your own goals. Since their competition didn't exist in your planet, you never participated. They're consumed by it. When you weren't even racing against them, they were running, perspiring, and burning themselves out in an attempt to catch up to you. You were traveling in a different direction, toward a horizon that is invisible to them. And now see them, exhausted, irritated, and circling about. Every strategy they devised, every plan they practiced, and every bit of effort they put into outperforming you didn't help them advance. Instead, it just served to bind them to you. They believed that outshining you was the aim. However, the truth, which they will never publicly acknowledge, is that being you was the intended outcome. And you were creating your reality while they were examining your mirror, so that was never an option. You were strengthening your base while others were replicating the surface. You were also becoming into the type of power that no shadow could contain while they were pursuing you. How can the Chosen One defeat someone who isn't even participating in their game? When someone isn't even racing them, how can they outrun them? In actuality, they are unable to. You stayed still and unaffected, taking your time, while others swung at ghosts and wore themselves out fighting illusions. And for that reason, their facade of competitiveness broke. They now understand that they were never your competitor. They were fighting a version of you that they could never reach, and they were their own captive. And it's the main thing that breaks them. They were never really in the game, in addition to losing. Chosen One, you defeated them without exerting any effort. The trap was their passion. The cage was their copy. The evidence was their fatigue. And you continued to rise higher, unabated, unstoppable, and irrefutable, while they spent their time chasing your reflection. Let them battle their spirits, then. Let them practice beating a shadow all night long. Not because you defeated them, but because you avoided ever having set foot on their battlefield. You've already won. Fifth is the observer. They didn't anticipate it. They were the unblinking eyes. Believing that nobody is observing while every action is already being monitored is the most egregious delusion. Listen carefully, Chosen Ones. Shouting your existence isn't your biggest strength. The secret is to move so stealthily that the adversary doesn't even realize you're there. They believed they were the observers. They believed they had the upper hand and were the ones pulling strings and setting traps in the dark. Here's the truth, however. All the while, they were the ones on stage. And you were taking notes in the crowd, my selected ones. They believed that every word they spoke, every sneer they displayed, and every thoughtless action they made disappeared into thin air. But you got all. Before it ever made it to the surface, you noticed it. The beauty of observation is that. They thought their looks were missed, but your eyes followed every movement. You could sense the change in the atmosphere, even if they believed their private conversations vanished into thin air. They believed they could pass off manipulation as strategy, but you could sense their emotions before they ever spoke. You were studying the mechanics of each trick as they were playing magician with smoke and mirrors, breaking down the illusion piece by piece until there was nothing left except desperation shrouded in a thin veneer confidence. Imagine a predator lurking in the thick grass. Believing it is invisible, the prey struts, moving freely and recklessly in its purported safety. However, every action is being tracked. Every movement was tracked, every pause logged. You were the Chosen One. They weren't simply something you noticed. You broke them down. You examined their patterns until the mask became transparent rather than just broke. When they attempted to seem confident, you could see the trembling in their voice. As soon as you walked into the room, you noticed how rigid they were. You saw their inflated triumphs for what they were. Empty and hollow. It was made to divert people's attention from the reality they were already losing, and the harsh truth. There is no need for you to reveal them. They let themselves be seen. Because people get careless when they believe they are invisible. They stop doing the math. They allow pride to lead them rather than self-control, with the assurance that you will never hear it. They murmur your name as if it were a curse. They set traps for you without understanding that each one leaves traces that may be traced back to them. Their delusions were destroyed, but your reality stood. Seventh, the signs are too accurate to ignore. When the invisible begins to speak out loud, they referred to it as a coincidence. It was a pattern you knew. They referred to it as chance. You were aware that it was accurate. You refer to what they term a randomly selected one as evidence. There comes a time when stillness becomes a signal, my beloved Chosen Ones, where only the woke can hear the invisible shouting so loudly. This moment has been lived by you. The moment when everything aligns too precisely, too abruptly, and too reliably to ever be referred to as a coincidence. You understand you're not fumbling in the dark at that point. Coordinates are what you are walking. You have been led to this exact location by every sign, whisper, and flicker in the background. But consider how it all started. It wasn't fireworks at first. It was subtly done. A dream that stuck to you and left its mark on your thoughts when the day dawned. A number that followed you around on clocks, billboards, and receipts until you were unable to ignore it any longer. A song that played just when you needed the message most. Meaning wasn't what you were after. Selected one. Meaning was after you. You questioned it for a time, didn't you? In your heart, you knew better than to assume. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe I'm overthinking. There was no paranoia here. This was no fantasy. It was acknowledgement. The signs weren't something you made up. You were thinking about them. Every thread, pattern, and alleged coincidence was a component of a design that you were created for, but didn't apply for. And the whole game changed in your favor when you came to that knowledge. They failed to notice it. Selected one. They are unable to. They laugh at things they don't comprehend because of this. Even when they feel uneasy, they ignore it. Yes, they sense it each time you walk into the room. Your existence frightens them since it doesn't fit into their categories, yet they're not sure what to label it. They are able to emulate your tone, manner, and even movements, but they are unable to capture your true self. It's what makes them crazy, because you cannot borrow, steal, or package what you carry. It is all yours. The harsh reality is as follows. They knew you were unique from the beginning. The stars, the jealousy, the ongoing minor trials and difficulties. It wasn't an accident. That was their dread masquerading as haughtiness. To determine your boundaries, they sought to measure you. However, each time they believed they had located the edge, they found none. Since they don't follow their rules, how do you judge them? How can you imprison someone whose map never showed their route? Your ability to prove yourself to them was never your strength, chosen one. The day you stopped rationalizing, explaining, and adjusting to their comfort level was when the true change occurred. The invisible part of you began to speak louder than words ever could on that day. You began constructing your own doors and stopped knocking on ones that weren't intended for you. They began to fear since all of their pranks, tricks, and quiet games suddenly had no meaning. They were rendered helpless as you continued on unhindered. You have experienced this, have you not? That moment when you see that other people's responses aren't directed at you. They're about the thing they can't identify that's within you. Even if they are unable to express it, they perceive it. Their grins don't reach their eyes because of this. Because of this, their inquiries seem to be probing for imaginary flaws. Because of this, they are drawn to you like shadows, attempting to analyze something that was never intended for them to comprehend. Here's where the beauty lies. It speaks louder the more they attempt to control it. The hidden is no longer concealing, chosen one. With each step you take, it's roaring. Through the weight of your presence and the clarity of your stillness. Silence, they believed, indicated nothing was going on. But your battleground has been quiet. Your weapon has been observation. Furthermore, their delusions are now unable to withstand the acuteness of your consciousness. Keep this in mind. These indications are not visible to the average person. This burden is too much for normal brains to handle. When the invisible begins to speak, only those who have been forged in the furnace of patience and observation will be able to hear it. And you are that. You are undervalued as a result. You were tested for that reason. Because nobody in the world ever thought someone so quiet could be so powerful. Now, however, have a look about. You weren't silent for nothing. They will never hear a louder proclamation than that one, that you've been in charge all along, and they're crushed by it. Not what you said or did, but the knowledge that you were listening to the signals that only the selected could hear while they were occupied with games. They fail to understand. They won't. However, picked ones don't explain, so you don't need them to. They let the invisible do the talking. Additionally, when the game is already won, it always shouts loudest. The eighth is going over the line and not being able to go back. The bridge behind you burns out at some point. By decision, not by chance. From that point on, every action is predetermined. For the chosen one, this is the turning point, the point at which hesitancy ends and truth triumphs. Your eyes can never shut once they open. You cannot revert to the lesser version of yourself that others previously attempted to confine after you have taken control of your life. You cannot return to your previous self after you have passed the invisible border. The previous skin no longer fits. You are standing at the edge of the ordinary right now, just where you were always supposed to be, gazing into the exceptional that has always been there. Others will claim that you have changed. You become too much, others will say. But the reality is known to both you and me. You remain the same. You turn and become your true self. Normalcy's mask came off. The delusion broke. And now you're proud of the unadulterated, unstoppable strength that has always been inside you. Just stop there. You indeed. This message isn't yours if your heart isn't racing right now and it doesn't make your veins burn. And it's okay. This is not for everyone. However, if every phrase seems to be drawing something old from inside you, you already know whether it sounds like I'm reading your tale aloud. The person I'm speaking to is you. You are the one who was never intended to fit in, to adhere to the rules, or to give in to delusions. They advise you to keep your head down, play smaller, settle for less, tone it down, and abide by their rules. Silence, they said, was a sign of weakness. You couldn't follow them when they told you that being different was a curse. Not because you were rebelling for the purpose of rebelling, but rather because something inside of you just wouldn't fit in their cage. You weren't made for everyday life, and I'm grateful for it since ordinary things break, bend, and get erased. But you persevere. The crack of lightning that splits the night sky is you. The hurricane that tears away illusions is you. The mountain that doesn't move is you. Untouchable, unstoppable, and unshakable despite the world's violent shaking. You are the chosen one, and you cannot retreat into the shadows after you have passed this boundary. You are never at home in the shadows. You may always find a stage waiting for you. You've chosen the more difficult route, while the others follow trends, vying for attention and pleading for acceptance. The route of doing it alone if you had to, not for praise or approval, but because you have no other option. You are this person. You know what you carry, even if the world doesn't comprehend it, fears it, or tries to make fun of it. You've made armor out of what was hurled at you to shatter you. Now that you are inside the stronghold, you have transformed the stones they threw into it. You didn't inherit your knowledge. It wasn't taken from a different book. Fire seared it into your flesh, survival honed it, and you fought wars no one else witnessed. Your energy feels different as a result. People are unable to fully understand you because of this. Even if they are unable to identify it, they bear the burden of what you have gone through. Here's the reality. Not everybody will understand. Not everyone is destined to. The majority of people will never know what it's like to have this level of power, understanding, and clarity. However, those who do, the few, are your people. The ones who see through the same delusions, who don't give in to phony games and artificial grins. Those who, whatever the consequences, tread the path of truth. They're out there. Just the truth. No games or masks. And because power knows power, you'll know when you've found the one. Thus, the decision is in front of you, evident and unquestionable. Remain little, keep secure, remain in the prison they made for you, or truly embrace what is already yours. Here's the catch, however. Once you claim it and step in, it's impossible to go back. That bridge will always burn. And it's supposed to be that way, because you were created to ascend, not to fall back. You already know which option is yours if you've read this far. The moment everyone's eyes are on you, number 9. The illusion is broken when their gazes finally meet yours. When you stop concealing, other people's masks begin to fall off. This is the pivotal moment, chosen ones. The world can no longer pretend you're invisible once you make the decision to stop shrinking and to stop lowering your light to make other people feel better. There are no pyrotechnics to signal the transition. Silently, it infiltrates. Then all of a sudden, it is indisputable. Have you not felt it? When you enter a room, there's a sudden weight in the air. That pause after you speak is simply too lengthy. That lingering look that seems more like calculating than interest. Everyone's eyes were on you the moment you emerged from concealment. It felt weird at first. When your thoughts become too keen, phones started to malfunction. Just as you were ready to express the truth, conversations started to diverge. People staring at you, as if you were hiding something they couldn't identify. It wasn't picked at random. Alignment was the cause. The patterns around you were upset when you took charge of your own destiny, and they reacted. The world noticed. Let's discuss them, however. Those who previously showed little concern. Those who ignored your patience, scoffed at your stillness, and undervalued your observations. All of a sudden, people are gazing. All of a sudden, they're observing from the sidelines, their gaze fixed and their focus keen. Not because they regard you with respect. No, because they are afraid of the unknown. They want to tear you down, dissect you, and chart every move you make like an intractable puzzle, in an attempt to identify a formula, a weakness, or a crack. They linger, measuring and overanalyzing every action you perform. This is what they will never understand, however. On their timetable, you don't move. You don't comply with their regulations. They anticipate a predictable course, but you don't follow it. They will never be able to figure you out because of this. They look for your weaknesses. Instead, they discover a wall of poise, a presence too calm, a stillness too exact. Being perfect isn't your strength. What counts most is being untouchable. Consider it. It is not power when they scan you with their eyes. It's desperate. In order to avoid having to confront the reality, they are frantic to box you in, explain you, and make you into something commonplace. They are not like you. The very fact that you emerged from the shadows revealed the hollowness of their clamor. Your entire presence is a mirror they are afraid to gaze at, which is why they are uneasy, chosen one. And I understand your question. Why now? Why didn't they notice till I moved completely into my own energy? Because you shattered their fantasy the moment you stopped acting tiny. They might tell themselves you were harmless as long as you didn't say anything. They might act as if you didn't exist as long as you remained in the background. However, their illusion was destroyed the instant you ceased hiding and your stillness turned into presence. And terror jumps in to cover the gaps left by illusions breaking. Now have a look at them. They monitor, analyze, and attempt to decipher every word, pause, and action, yet they still fail. The beauty of being selected is that you're not here to conform to their expectations. You're not here to walk in their footsteps. You're not here to explain yourself to those whose brains are too narrow to understand you. Your purpose is to remain unflinching, untouchable, and indisputable. They will continue to watch you. Their murmurs will intensify. They will get obsessed out of curiosity. However, you continue to move, choosing one. You don't provide an explanation. You do not defend. You don't bend. Because this is the reality. The code will never be cracked by them. The quiet will never be read by them. The blueprint is never in their possession. And the more they try, the more helpless they'll feel, since understanding isn't what gives you strength. You are powerful because you are incomprehensible. Let them gaze then. Let them ponder. Allow them to get themselves into a lot of trouble while attempting to solve a riddle that was never theirs. Because everything you see, hear, and inquire about just serves to reaffirm what you already know. You quit their game the once you came out hiding. And they lost as soon as you quit playing their game. And the reason their eyes are on you right now is because they're the selected ones. Because you drew them into your world, not because you entered theirs. And they have no chance in your world. So here we are, selected ones.